Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Paper Rose Studios' Animal Kingdom collection along with some of their new 3D embossing folders and a new Hello die. I've always been a fan of using general sentiment, so I couldn't resist this new Hello. It's called Hello Border. When you run it through your die machine, it'll cut out the word and it's still connected to the border. You can have a narrow border or a wide border. It's fun to have that option. Paper Rose recently released several new 3D embossing folders, and they add beautiful detail to your cards or projects. I'll be using two of them in the video. The first one is called Ben's Plaid, and it has this beautiful plaid design. It's a little hard to see in the video. The embossing folders are a nice large size. They're about 4 3/4 of an inch by 6 3/4 of an inch. The next embossing folder is called Tufted Elegance. And the last embossing folder is called Simple Dots. And I've used this in a previous video already. I love a good polka dot embossing folder. Next, I'll show you the Animal Kingdom collection. I have the two embossed die cut packs, the 6x6 paper pad, and also the 12x12 paper pad. And the collection also includes a cut apart pack. I'll show you the 6x6 paper collection first. There are 18 double-sided pattern papers, and the colors and designs are just gorgeous. I love that this collection is perfect for masculine or feminine cards. There is one sheet that has a bunch of cut apart images. They are on the smaller size. Then there are lots of gorgeous, colorful scenes that look like a mosaic design. On the back side, there are several black and white designs. So we have all those gorgeous designs and then some black and white. And if you add a pop of color on the black and white backgrounds, I think it would look stunning. Paper Rose always has so many unique and beautiful collections. Now here's a look at the 12x12 paper collection. It's basically the same as the 6x6, just a larger scale. But one thing I love about the 12x12 collections from Paper Rose, on the back of the cover sheet, there are tons of sentiments in coordinating colors to work with the paper collection. And there's a nice variety of sentiments. Lots of general hello, hey there, there's thank you, just a little note, congratulations, lots of birthday, feel better soon, just because. And I will be using a bunch of the sentiment cut aparts on my cards. Here's the same image cut apart sheet that's included in the 6x6 collection, just on the larger scale. The cut aparts in the 12x12 collection are all 3 by 3 inches. And at the very bottom of each of the 12x12 sheets, there's also a polka dot design, and the colors coordinate with the collection. So it's always nice to have that narrow strip to add to your card or project. I'll go through the rest of the designs, and as you can see, they're the same, just a larger scale. For my cards in this video, I'm mostly using the 6x6 collection, but I will be using the sentiment and image cut aparts from the 12x12 collection, along with some of the narrow polka dot strips. If you do traditional 12x12 scrapbooking, this would be a great collection to have. There are two coordinating embossed die cut packs. I love Paper Rose's embossed die cuts. There's Animal Kingdom 1.0 and Animal Kingdom 2.0. The two sets are different, but they do feature the same animals. So here's a look at that gorgeous embossed detail. You can really see that glossy detail when the light shines on it. And what's really nice about the die cut packs, all of the images simply pop out, so no fussy cutting is necessary. After I pop out all of the die cuts, I do use a pair of scissors and trim off those tiny white tabs. This is just a personal preference, but I think it gives the image a cleaner look. Now here's a look at Animal Kingdom 2.0. more gorgeous animal images. I love the vibrant colors, and I think they stand out even more with the beautiful embossed detail. Most of the animal images are individual, but there are a few like this sheet that have the scene in the background. And I think that's a really fun design, more gorgeous color. As I mentioned earlier, there's also a cut apart pack. I don't have it, but I will link it in the description. If you love fussy cutting, you may enjoy that pack. Plus, the cut apart pack includes quite a few sheets. So I've already gone ahead and cut out all of the sentiments. Plus, I've popped out the embossed die cuts and cut down one of the image cut apart sheets from the 12x12 pack. I have everything stored in some craft stack trays from Spellbinders. And if you weren't aware, Spellbinders now carries Paper Rose products. I love that there are more and more US locations that are carrying Paper Rose. So let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. Most of my cards are going to be very simple. With such beautiful papers and images, you really don't need to add anything extra. For this first card, I'm using what looks like a water background with that mosaic design. I'm adding 2 narrow strips of the orange polka dot paper, and this is that strip that's at the bottom of the 12x12 paper. I'll layer the background on some dark blue cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. The background pattern paper piece is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and my cardstock layer is an additional 1/8 of an inch. So 4 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8 of an inch. When using 6x6 paper and cutting that full background, I always end up with a 2-inch strip and also a narrow strip that's about 3/4 by 4 inches. And I like to add that narrow strip on the inside of the card just for a little extra detail. This first card is featuring one of the embossed die cut images, little family of penguins. Just for a little extra stability, I'll first adhere it on a scrap piece of cardstock. Then I'll put adhesive on the back and add my penguin image on the center of the card, right on top of those orange polka dot strips. I'll add the sentiment, "Thankful for You," and I'm layering it on the same blue cardstock. For a final finishing touch, I'll add a small banner in the upper right-hand corner, using a small scrap piece of the dark blue cardstock. I'll first cut a fishtail on the bottom, then I'll cut the right side in slightly at an angle, flip it over, and do the same thing on the other side. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. The other card, I used one of the cut apart images instead of the embossed die cuts. Now moving on to card design number 2. This paper is one of my favorites. I love the forest design. It really reminds me of the forests in Western Washington. I cut down that piece to 5 3/8 of an inch by 4 1/8 of an inch, and I'll layer it on some dark brown cardstock. And that layer is A2 size. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 5 1/2 inches by 4 1/4 inches. This card will feature the deer image cut apart. And with the busy background and the busy image background, I want to make sure it'll stand out. So first I'll layer it on some gold pearlescent cardstock, and this is just cardstock from my stash. Then I'll also layer it on some of the same dark brown cardstock. But for that layer, I'm offsetting it, so you'll only see the brown cardstock at the top and left side of the image. Now I'll flip it over, pop it up with some foam dimension. I'm using scrapbook.com's 1/4 inch foam in the 1 millimeter thickness. So it'll add just that little bit of dimension. For a sentiment, I'm adding the word hello. I'll first cut a fishtail on the right side. And when adhering the sentiment, I'll have part of it sitting on the image panel. For the portion that goes off of the image panel, I will add some foam dimension. Using more foam from scrapbook.com, This is the same 1/4 inch, but this time I'm using the 2mm thickness. I'll cut just a small piece and put it on the right side. Then I'll put glue on the left side of the sentiment and adhere it in place. For a final finishing touch, using a small scrap piece of the dark brown cardstock, I'll cut a small banner and adhere it in the upper right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. The other card features another deer image, but this time I use the embossed die cut. For card design number 3, I'm using one of the black and white designs for the background. Looks like a cracked wall or pavement. I do want to add a little bit of color. I pulled out some scrap pieces of cardstock. I have a light tan, sort of peach color strip that's going across the card, and I will cut a fishtail on the right side. On the left side, I'm adding a strip of rust-colored cardstock. For my background piece, it's 5 1/4 inch by 4 inches, and I'll be layering it on some dark brown cardstock. I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. This card will be featuring one of the elephant embossed die cut pieces. It does stand out against the background, but for a little more separation, I'll first adhere the elephant on a vellum stitch circle die cut. I did pop up the elephant with some foam dimension. I'll attach the elephant on the circle first, then I'll flip over the circle, put glue on the back just behind the elephant. I don't want any of the glue to show through on the vellum. Then I'll adhere it on the left side of the card. For a sentiment, I'm adding "You are incredible." I'll cut a fishtail on the right side, and I'll be tucking the left side of the sentiment underneath the elephant. I don't want the sentiment going too far on the right side of the card, so I will trim down that fishtail just a little bit more. Since I already have all the foam dimension underneath the elephant, I couldn't get that very left side to tuck in nicely, so I did trim off just a tiny bit of that sentiment area. Before adhering the sentiment, I'll also add a scrap cardstock piece on the right side where it goes off of the circle die cut, and that'll help it stay at the same level. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. For a final finishing touch, I'm adding some dark sparkle crystals. These are from Studio Katia, and I don't believe they're available any longer. I've really been trying to use up some of my older bling, but I have so much, I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. I'll put 2 in the upper right-hand corner and 3 in the lower left-hand corner. And I am using Scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool to pick those up. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 4, selected this beautiful rainbow forest background. I cut down that piece to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. I'll layer it on some dark brown cardstock that's an additional 1/8 inch. Put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 inch of the white card base showing. Then I'll add that extra little strip of pattern paper on the inside of the card. This card will feature the fox embossed die cut piece. Want to make sure it stands out against the background, so I'll first layer it on some dark brown cardstock, then I'll layer it again on some vellum. And I used a stitch square die from Paper Rose for that vellum piece. Now I'll pop up the fox image using Scrapbook.com's 1/4 inch foam in the 1mm thickness. And when I'm adding the foam, I'm trying to put it behind just the brown cardstock area. I don't want the foam to be visible through the vellum. I'll put a piece along that outside edge and also add a few on the inside. That way there isn't one area that sags. Then I'll remove the release paper and add the fox image at the top of the card. For a sentiment, I'll be adding the word hello, this time using the new Hello Border die set from Paper Rose. I cut out 2 of them, one from gold pearlescent cardstock and another from brown cardstock. I'll layer the two pieces together, offsetting them just slightly so you can see some of that brown cardstock underneath and on the left side of the sentiment. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere the sentiment underneath the fox image. I left a very narrow border underneath the sentiment. As I mentioned earlier, you could leave a wider border. With that narrow border, I was trying to make sure to get it nice and straight across the bottom of the card. Since I'm using glue, it does take just a little bit longer for that glue to fully adhere. You can see that right side keeps drooping down, so I am trying to hold it in place a little bit longer. So there is my finished card, and I did make two using this design. The other card features the fox cut apart image instead of the embossed die cut. For card design number 5, I'm using another black and white pattern paper for the background. And I cut the design in half, so this is 3 inches. And I also trimmed off just a tiny bit on the side, so it's 5 3/8 of an inch. I'll be layering it on some black cardstock. Underneath the black and white pattern paper, I'm adding a strip of pattern paper from Paper Rose's Poinsettia Garden Watercolor collection. I used this collection when it was first released, and I still have a little bit of the watercolor collection left, and the black design worked perfectly to put at the very bottom, kind of creating a floor for my animal image to stand on. I selected one of the tiger embossed die cut images, and I think the orange colors look striking against the black and white background. I did pop up the tiger with some foam dimension. I'll remove the release paper and adhere the tiger in the center of the card. So now instead of that circle for the background, it looks like an arch behind the tiger. For sentiment, I'm adding Just For You. I put some double-sided adhesive tape on the back, and I'll adhere the sentiment in the upper right-hand corner. For embellishments, I'm adding some black jewels. These are from Pretty Pink Posh. I'll put 3 around the sentiment and 2 in the lower left-hand corner. They don't have adhesive on the back, so I'll first add a small drop of Barely Art glue. Use Scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool to pick up the jewels, then press them in place. And I know right now you can see the white glue, but it will dry clear. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. This is one of my favorite cards. I love the look of the tiger on the black and white background. For card design number 6, I'll start off by doing some ink blending. I have a piece of white cardstock that's A2 size. I laid it in my Waffle Flower mini stencil mat. And the first ink color I'm using is Distress Oxide Peacock Feathers. And as I'm inking the background, I realize my ink pad is very dry. So after I finished this card, I did add some re-inker to the ink pad. The other ink color I'm using is Distress Oxide Pine Needles. And I'm doing a larger portion of the green compared to the peacock feather at the top. I will bring in a little bit more of the peacock feather to blend those 2 colors together. And I'm not worried about getting a very solid color. I really want to just add some color to the background. This last set of cards is the only set where I'm not using any of the pattern paper. Next, I'll add a white splatter to the background using Spellbinder's White Splatter Watercolor. I'll put just a tiny bit on an acrylic block, spritz it with water, mix up that solution, then I'll gently tap my paintbrush over the background, creating that white splatter. Super easy, and it'll add just that little extra detail to the card. I will let that sit and dry for several minutes. Now I'll emboss the background using one of Paper Rose's new embossing folders. For this card, I'm using the Ben's Plaid design. I love this design, it's so pretty. Now I'll put glue on the back and add my card front onto a card base. With an embossed background, I want to make sure to add enough adhesive on the back to make sure all of those areas lay flat. Now I'll bring in one of the embossed die cut images and a sentiment cut apart. This card will feature the adorable koala, and I did pop it up with some foam dimension. I'll remove the release paper, add the koala in the center of the card, more toward the top. Want to leave enough space underneath for the sentiment. Thank you so very much. And I also popped up the sentiment with some foam dimension. So there is my finished card, and this time I made 6. I used a variety of different embossing folders, different ink colors for the background. For some of the cards I used the deboss side, and others I used the emboss side. The final 2 cards have orange and brown ink because I think it matched better with the embossed images. And I added a black splatter on those last 2 cards. I love how easy it is to create a card using the gorgeous embossed die cut pieces along with the sentiment. It was fun using a mix of the pattern paper, embossed die cut pieces, and cut apart images and sentiments. Now here's another look at the 16 cards I made using Paper Rose Studios' Animal Kingdom collection. This is a beautiful collection, and I still have tons of the embossed die cut pieces, image and sentiment cut aparts. I'll hang on to those since they're perfect if I need to pop together a quick and beautiful card. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. Paper Rose is based in Australia, and they do ship their products internationally, but you can also purchase them here in the US, and I have links for both locations in the description box. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.